The Secret Playbook of Power. Machiavelli explained, "Power is never given. It is taken, shaped, and defended. Over time, it grows quietly in the shadows. Before it ever shows itself in the light, most people spend their lives waiting for permission, waiting for opportunity, waiting for recognition." But Machiavelli understood something deeper. The world does not reward waiting, it rewards those who understand the rules beneath the surface. In every society, there is an invisible game being played, a game of influence, perception, and control, and the majority, for people, are unaware that they are part of it. They follow routines, they trust appearances, and they assume fairness exists. But those who rise above the rest see beyond this illusion. They recognize patterns, they notice weaknesses, and they act with intention. Human nature is the foundation of all power. People are not as complex as they pretend to be. They are driven by fear of loss, desire for gain, and the constant need for security. Once you understand this, you begin to see how decisions are made not just by others, but by entire groups, entire nations. Even leaders themselves become predictable when you look past their words and focus on their motivations. Never build your power on emotions alone. Emotions change quickly. What feels like loyalty today can turn into resentment tomorrow. What feels like admiration can shift into envy. The wise observer keeps a distance. They connect, but they do not depend. They listen, but they do not fully reveal. Fear and respect exist on a thin line. If people only love you, they may leave when it suits them. If they only fear you, they will wait for a chance to destroy you. But when they respect your strength and understand the consequences of crossing you, they remain steady. This balance is not easy. It requires control, discipline, and awareness of every move you make. Appearances shape reality more than truth ever will. People do not have the time or the patience to discover what is real. They judge based on what they see, what they hear, and what others repeat. So you must design your image carefully. Your words, your actions, your silence, all become part of the story people tell about you, and that story becomes your power. Never show all your cards. Unpredictability creates tension, and tension creates control. When people cannot read you, they hesitate. When they hesitate, they lose confidence. And when they lose confidence, they become easier to influence. Mystery is not weakness, it is a shield. Trust is a currency, but it is also a risk you must give. Just enough to build connection, but never so much that you become exposed. Every alliance, every partnership, every friendship carries potential benefit and potential danger. The powerful mind weighs both constantly without becoming emotional about either. Conflict is not something to avoid. It is something to understand. Conflict reveals hidden intentions. It exposes of strength and weakness. It forces decisions that would otherwise remain delayed. The one who can stay calm in conflict, who can observe rather than react, becomes the one who controls the outcome. Never let others define your position. If you do not shape how you are seen, someone else will, and their version may not serve you. Reputation is built slowly, but it can be altered quickly if you lose control of the narrative. So you must guide it consistently through actions, through results, through presence. Power also requires patience. Not everything must be done immediately. Sometimes the strongest move is to wait, to let others reveal themselves, to let situations develop, to let mistakes happen without interference. Timing separates those who chase from those who lead. Reward those who are useful, but remain aware that usefulness can change. The person who helps you today may hinder you tomorrow. Roles shift, interests evolve, and power must adapt accordingly. Never allow any single person to hold too much influence over your position. Balance must always be maintained. There is also the art of silence. Not every truth needs to be spoken. Not every thought needs to be shared. Silence creates space for observation. It allows others to reveal more than they intend. and it keeps your intentions. Protected words once spoken cannot be taken back, but silence remains under your control. Adaptability is the hidden strength behind every long-lasting power structure. Rigid systems collapse under pressure, but flexible ones bend and survive. The world changes constantly. New challenges, new players, new opportunities. And only those who can adjust their strategy without losing their core position continue to rise. Understanding people is more valuable than controlling them directly. When you understand what drives someone, you no longer need force. You can guide them subtly. You can influence decisions without confrontation, and this form of power is often the most effective because it is invisible. Never confuse kindness with weakness or strength with cruelty. True power lies in control of self-emotions, impulses, reactions, the ability to remain steady while others become unpredictable. This stability creates confidence, and that confidence attracts influence. As you move forward in this invisible game, you begin to notice more patterns, more behaviors, more unspoken rules. You start to see how small actions create large consequences, how minor decisions shift entire outcomes, and how those who seem powerful often rely on strategies that are simple, yet executed with precision. And once you see these patterns, you cannot unsee them. Every interaction becomes a lesson. Every situation becomes an opportunity. Every person becomes a reflection of deeper motivations. And you continue observing, learning, adjusting, moving quietly through a world where most people never realize the game being played around them. While you keep building, understanding, refining strategy, and stepping further into a position where control is no longer something you chase, but something you gradually shape and expand without announcing it, without rushing it, and without ever reaching a final point, because the game itself never truly ends. As this understanding deepens, you begin to notice that power is not a single moment or a final destination. It is a living process that keeps shifting with time. People who believe they have reached the top often stop paying attention, and that is the exact moment their decline quietly begins, because power does not stay with those who become comfortable. It stays with those who remain aware. Awareness becomes your greatest weapon. You start to see how conversations carry hidden meanings, how silence can speak louder than words, and how people reveal their intentions, not through what they say, but through how they behave. Over time, patterns begin to form, and once you recognize these patterns, you gain an advantage that most people never realize exists. People rarely show their true intentions. At first they test, they observe, they adjust their behavior depending on what benefits them the most. And this is why patience becomes essential. Reacting too quickly to words or promises can lead you into traps that were never obvious in the beginning. But those who wait, who watch, who allow time to reveal consistency or inconsistency are able to make decisions with clarity. There is also a deeper level of control that comes from emotional discipline. When you are able to manage your reactions, you remove one of the easiest ways others can manipulate you most. People react instantly to pressure, to criticism, to praise, and in doing so, they expose their weaknesses. But when you remain steady, when your responses are measured and intentional, you become unpredictable, and that unpredictability creates strength. Control over perception continues to play a central role, because people build their understanding of you based on limited information and repeated impressions. If you remain consistent in how you present yourself, others begin to form a stable image of you. And once that image is established, it becomes difficult for them to challenge it, even if reality shifts slightly. However, you must also understand that perception can be reshaped when needed sometimes. Growth requires changing how others see you, and this must be done gradually through actions rather than declarations, because sudden changes create suspicion, while gradual shifts create acceptance. In every environment, there are individuals who seek influence and those who avoid it. The ones who seek influence often make themselves visible. They speak more, they try to lead openly, while those who avoid it tend to observe quietly and adapt. The key is not to fall completely into either category, but to move between them, when necessary, being visible when it strengthens your position and invisible when it protects it. Information is another form of power, but not all information is equal. Knowing what others know is useful, but knowing what others do not know is far more valuable, because it allows you to anticipate reactions and prepare responses before situations fully develop. This creates a sense of control that others cannot easily understand. At the same time, sharing information must be done carefully. Revealing too much too early reduces your advantage, while revealing too little can limit trust. The balance lies in giving enough to build connection, while keeping enough to maintain leverage. One of the most overlooked aspects of power is energy. Where you invest your time, your focus, and your effort determines how your influence grows. Many people waste energy on situations that do not contribute to their position. They engage in unnecessary conflicts. They chase validation. They respond to distractions, and in doing so, they weaken their own progress. Those who understand power become selective. They choose where to engage and where to remain silent. They recognize that not every battle is worth fighting, and that sometimes ignoring a situation removes its power entirely. There is also the concept of strategic patience, which goes beyond simply waiting. It involves preparing during the waiting period, observing changes, gathering insight, and positioning yourself so that when the right moment arrives, your action becomes far more effective than if you had acted earlier. Timing often determines the outcome more than effort itself. A well-timed decision can achieve what constant effort cannot, and this is why observation is critical, because it allows you to recognize the moment when conditions are most favorable. Trust remains a complex element within the playbook. It cannot be completely avoided. Connections require some level of trust, but it must always be balanced with awareness. Blind trust creates vulnerability, while complete distrust creates isolation, and neither extreme supports long-term power. Instead, trust becomes conditional, based on patterns, behavior, and consistency. Over time, and even then, it is maintained with a level of caution that prevents complete exposure. Another layer to consider is adaptability, not just in strategy, but in mindset. Situations change rapidly, environments evolve, and people shift their positions. Those who remain fixed in their thinking struggle to respond effectively, while those who stay flexible can adjust without losing direction. This flexibility does not mean lack of principles. It means understanding that methods can change, while goals remain steady, and this distinction allows for growth without confusion. Power also involves understanding consequences. Every decision creates a chain of reactions, some immediate and some delayed, and those who fail to consider these outcomes often find themselves dealing with problems they did not anticipate. Thinking beyond the present moment becomes essential, considering how actions taken today may influence opportunities or challenges in the future. Creates a level of foresight that separates reactive individuals from strategic ones. There is also strength in restraint. Having the ability to act does not always mean you should. Sometimes, the decision not to act carries more power because it allows situations to unfold naturally, revealing information that would otherwise remain hidden. Restraint prevents unnecessary exposure and preserves resources for moments when action becomes truly necessary. As your awareness grows, you begin to see how influence spreads not only through direct interaction, but also through indirect channels. People talk, they share opinions, they observe each other, and these interactions shape collective perception, which in turn affects individual behavior. Understanding this network of influence allows you to guide it subtly, without needing to control every element directly. Confidence plays a significant role, but it must be grounded in reality. Empty confidence can be easily challenged, while confidence, built on understanding, remains stable, even under pressure. This type of confidence does not require constant expression. It is felt through presence, through decision-making, and through consistency. Over time, you will notice that challenges become more complex as your position strengthens. Simple problems are replaced by layered situations that require deeper analysis and more careful execution. And this is where continuous learning becomes essential, because past strategies may not always apply in the same way. Learning comes not only from success, but also from observing others, from studying patterns, from analyzing outcomes, and from reflecting on your own decisions. Experience adds another piece to the larger understanding of how power operates. There is also a silent competition that exists in every environment, not always visible, not always acknowledged, but always present. Individuals, positions, influence, and opportunities, even when they do not express it openly. In this competition, influences behavior, decisions, and alliances. Recognizing this allows you to navigate interactions with greater awareness, understanding that not every action is neutral, and not every response is purely personal. Often, there are underlying motivations connected to positioning and advantage. As you continue moving forward, the distinction between surface-level interactions and deeper strategic movements becomes clearer. You begin to operate with intention, even in small actions, knowing that consistency in small details builds a foundation for larger influence. And with this foundation, your presence begins to carry weight. Not because you demand attention, but because your actions create reliability and predictability in outcomes, which others begin to notice and respond to. Yet even at this stage, the process does not slow down. New variables continue to appear, new challenges emerge, and new dynamics form, requiring constant adjustment and awareness. And as you keep observing, learning, and refining your approach, you move further into a position where your decisions are guided not by impulse, but by understanding, where each step connects to a larger pattern, each interaction feeds into a broader strategy, and each moment becomes part of an ongoing process that continues to expand without reaching a final point, because the nature of power itself is continuous, evolving, and always demanding deeper awareness and sharper perception as the playbook keeps unfolding, revealing more layers, more insights, and more opportunities for those who remain attentive to the details that others ignore, while the system around them keeps shifting, changing, and creating new paths that only become visible to those who have trained themselves to see beyond the obvious and continue moving forward without pause, without conclusion, and without ever fully stepping outside the game itself. And after everything you have seen, after every pattern, every hidden rule, every silent strategy, one truth becomes clear: power was never something distant or unreachable. It was always present in the way people think, act, react, and decide. It exists in every conversation, every pause, every choice to speak or remain silent. And once you understand this, you begin to realize that power is not a title, it is not a position, and it is not something handed over by others. It is something built quietly through awareness, discipline, and control. Those who never see this continue to move through life, reacting to situations controlled by emotions, influenced by opinions, and guided by surface-level understanding. They chase approval, they depend on validation, and they struggle to understand why outcomes never fully remain in their control. But those who begin to see beyond this start to operate differently. They pause before reacting, they observe before deciding, and they think beyond the immediate moment. This shift does not happen instantly. It develops over time, through attention, through reflection, and through experience. Every situation becomes a lesson, every interaction becomes insight, and slowly the world starts to look different. Not because it has changed, but because your perception has evolved. You begin to notice how people reveal themselves through consistency or lack of it, how trust is built or broken through repeated actions, and how influence spreads, not through force, but through subtle guidance and controlled presence. You stop looking for obvious answers and start understanding deeper motivations, recognizing that what is said is often less important than what is intended. With this awareness comes responsibility, because power without control leads to chaos, and control without awareness leads to failure. Balance becomes essential, knowing when to act and when to wait, when to speak and when to stay silent, when to push forward and when to step back. This balance is what allows power to grow without creating unnecessary resistance. There will always be uncertainty. There will always be moments where outcomes are unclear, but those who have trained themselves to think strategically do not fear uncertainty. They use it. They move through it with calculated decisions, understanding that not every variable can be controlled, but every response can be shaped. And as this mindset strengthens, you begin to rely less on external approval and more on internal clarity. Decisions become more precise, reactions become more controlled, and your presence becomes more stable, not because you seek attention, but because you understand direction. The world will continue to change. People will continue to adapt. New challenges will emerge, will appear, and through all of this, the playbook remains active, not as a fixed set of rules, but as a continuous process of observation, learning, and adjustment. There is no final level, no ultimate position, where everything stops, because power itself is fluid. It moves, it shifts, and it responds to those who are aware enough to follow its flow. So the real question is not whether power exists or whether it can be reached. The real question is whether you are willing to see what most ignore, to think beyond what is obvious, and to act with intention rather than impulse. Because once you begin to do this, you are no longer just part of the system. You are shaping your position within it, step by step, decision by decision, moment by moment. And as you continue on this path, you realize that the greatest advantage was never strength alone. It was understanding, the kind that sharpens your awareness, strengthens your control, and allows you to move through complexity with clarity, while others remain uncertain, still trying to figure out the game that you have already started to read. This is where the journey continues, not with an ending, but with a deeper beginning, where every insight leads to another layer. Every experience builds another level of awareness, and every moment offers another chance to refine your approach and strengthen your position in a world that never stops moving and never stops testing those who choose to play with intention. Share, subscribe for more if you like to watch these video PLZ like this.